You see all these people with 500 plus connections and you have 5 or 10. You're going to get about a 30% response rate.
Like ChatGPT and LinkedIn to navigate the job market.
Is that it's still not at a stage where it can replace us as writers and communicators. What are 10 specific job titles that match those interests? Product manager, data scientist, whatever it is.
Great. So for our audience, everybody can see Jeremy's LinkedIn to see how he helps students with their careers. He's a University of Michigan graduate. Plus, Jeremy has impressive experience as a marketing director at Khan Academy and Google. He is also a best-selling author of a book named Career Coach GPT, which you can find on Audible as well. So welcome, Jeremy. Welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me on, Vesh.
Let's just jump into question number 1. As a newcomer to LinkedIn, my connections are limited to friends. How can I enhance my LinkedIn profile and broaden my outreach effectively?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for anyone who's starting their career or who's new to LinkedIn, it can feel a little intimidating. You see all these people with 500 plus connections and you have 5 or 10. Well, here's the really good news. If you have an alma mater, basically a place that you've gone to college or university or any kind of school background, you can look up that university's page on LinkedIn. So you could look up, University of Toronto or INSEAD or whatever the university might be. And you will see under the alumni tab that there are tens or hundreds of thousands of alumni who you could be reaching out to. So even if you don't know a lot of people in the space directly, take advantage of the fact that there are so many alumni who'd be happy to share their experience. And if you reach out on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a current student or I'm a fellow alum, that's often all you need to open up a door to a new opportunity.
Got it. And so you mean we should text them even without not knowing them?
Exactly. And here's why. There's a really powerful connectivity that comes with a shared identity and a shared affiliation. And so if you were to reach out to someone cold and just say, hey, give me a job or tell me about your experience, you might have a very low response rate. But if you start with all the things that you have in common, I went to the same school you did, I've worked at the same company, whatever those commonalities might be, that's going to really drive up the response rate because people have this desire to pay it forward specifically to people who are like them, who are following in their footsteps. And so you always want to start with what you share before you ask for what you want.
Understood. And do you have any idea on top of your, statistics or something like how many cold messages we have to do?
Yeah, great question. So in my experience, if you send out really personalized messages, even if they're cold, you're going to get about a 30% response rate. And that's because, again, it's not totally cold. It's warmed up by the fact that you have these commonalities and you've made those clear. However, here's another secret strategy. If you have someone introduce you on LinkedIn, so for example, if Vesh says, hey, Jeremy, could you introduce me to Sarah? Guess what? Your response rate from Sarah is going to be much higher because now you have someone who's vouching for you, who's saying Vesh is a good person, you can trust this person. And one of the cool things about LinkedIn is whenever you visit anyone's profile, it'll tell you who you know in common. And so you can find someone from that list to say, would you mind making an introduction? It'll really help me get my foot in the door and get off to a better conversation with this person. And it really does work.
Got it. So moving on to our question number 2, building upon an improved LinkedIn presence, how can I leverage tools like ChatGPT and LinkedIn to navigate the job market, tailor my resume, and pinpoint the ideal job opportunities?
Yeah, it's a really important question, especially because these tools are becoming more ubiquitous with every passing day. And I think the really important thing to remember about ChatGPT is that it's still not at a stage where it can replace us as writers and communicators. It doesn't know enough about us. It's not good enough at generating content that's really engaging for the reader. However, what it can do is get you unstuck if you're feeling that you're not sure what to do. And there are a couple different examples. Let's say you're at the start of your job search and you're not even sure what to focus on. How can I build a resume or a LinkedIn profile if I don't know what I'm building towards? And you can go to ChatGPT and you could say, here are my skills, here are my passions. What are 10 specific job titles that match those interests. And ChatGPT will boil the ocean of opportunities down and give you a list of really good jobs that could be a good fit for you. So that's one way. Then when you're actually building your resume, building your LinkedIn, if you feel stuck, if you're not sure what to write about, you could always say, what are the 20 most important keywords for this role? Product manager, data scientist, whatever it is. And now you have your magic list of most important words that you want to get into all those documents because that's what algorithms are going to scan for. And even if you're stuck in terms of trying to quantify your accomplishments, like we all know it's important to be clear about what did I actually do? What was the impact of my work? If you say ChatGPT, generate 3 potential ideas to add more quantitative impact to my profile, it'll be really creative and it'll help you think through different ways to convey what you've done. But the critical thing is you don't want to be copying and pasting this stuff right into your profile or right into your CV. You want to be using it almost as an editor, as someone to guide you on this path, not to do the writing for you.
There was so much to unpack over there,
I
but
know, it's a lot.
brought up to me through a mutual friend. The question says, we often see business students and marketing students and all other student types like navigating around LinkedIn to find jobs, but before this instance, I've never heard someone from a medical field also using LinkedIn. So they were the one asking me if I can have somebody that will help them find or just give some strategy how they can find medical jobs in this job market.
Yeah, great question. So here's the nice answer, which is it is true that there are certain industries that over-index on LinkedIn and certain industries that under-index. The former is stuff like finance, technology. The latter is stuff like medicine and law. However, the reality is that even in those latter industries, even if they're not using LinkedIn as much, it all comes down to relationships. And the data is super clear that you are 10 times more likely to be hired in any industry when you are referred by someone on the inside than when you apply cold as a stranger from the outside. Which means even if you don't necessarily see a lot of jobs listed in the medical field or the law field on LinkedIn, you still want to find people inside that law firm or inside that hospital who have a profile. You want to see what you have in common with them, like we talked about, and then you want to build rapport with them. Reach out, mention what you have in common, strike up a conversation. And if you have a really good conversation and hit it off, it's totally appropriate to say, hey, would you be willing to refer me in for this opportunity? I think I'd have a lot to offer. And just that single vote of someone saying, hey, I'm an insider, I'm voting for this person as a great candidate, that matters so much to recruiters and hiring managers who are trying to find trustworthy talent.
So that kind of translates into what I heard is like, it doesn't matter what you know, it matters who you know.
Yeah, and I would say it's both, because at some point, even if you're referred, and even if the referral gets you an interview, you still have to interview on your own merits. And so it is critical to be really good in your space, to be an expert in the most important skills. But a lot of times, even the world's best professionals won't even get interviews because they're just applying cold. And so that's why it's important to have the best of both worlds, both really great skills and really great connections.
And how would you say your new book can help students in figuring out more strategies and navigating around this job market?
Yeah, so the book is really designed to figure out how can you get the 80-20 rule working with ChatGPT. There's all this talk now about you got to be a prompt engineer, you have to know these fancy techniques. And in my experience, that's not true. What you really need to do is understand a couple of things that matter to the way that ChatGPT operates. Are your prompts specific? Does it give the information that it needs? And does it ask for specific outputs so ChatGPT puts it out in a language that's useful for you? And so I would say for anyone who's feeling stuck, who's not sure how to find that perfect career or write that ideal resume or get ready for an interview even, this book is basically a series of recipes, a series of shortcuts, if you will, to quickly get unstuck and moving in the right direction.
Great. I also do know like you have other books as well. If someone who is getting really interested in learning more about it, where should they start? Should they start with this book or the prior ones?
Yeah, I would actually say just come to my website. So I have this website called thejobinsiders.com, and it basically has a ton of free tools. My personal LinkedIn profile checklist, an AI assistant to help you build a great LinkedIn profile, all the stuff that you can use right off the shelf to immediately turbocharge your search. So come to the site, take advantage of all those free tools before you spend a cent on anything else. And honestly, like that's the thing is I think some people will say, okay, I want to buy the book, which is great. Some people will say, hey, I got what I needed and now I'm moving in the right direction. And that's all I want. Like as a career coach, I think the worst thing is that there are so many talented people out there who never get a chance to leverage those talents because they don't know how to play the specific game of hiring. And I'll be honest, it is a game. It is a little bit of a sort of like very structured process where the employer gets to call the shots. But if you can understand how that works, if you can understand the algorithm that's driving it, you can make it work for you.
Got it. So that was part of how to design our resumes, but how can we prepare for interviews?
Yeah, so this is interesting because interviews are obviously the most human part of the process. There's no interview robot that I know of that companies are hiring yet. However, I do think that there's a lot of tools out there that use technology to help you get prepared. So one example that I talk about in the book is so often we've been told by our own career coaches, in university, when you prepare your answers, use the STAR method. And this is this classic way of organizing an answer to be really logical. So it's situation, task, action, result. Here's what was happening. Here's what I did about it. Here was the happy ending. Now, a lot of students struggle with this because it feels so formulaic. But guess what? You can go to ChatGPT and you could say, tell me the top 10 most likely questions for this job description, and please generate STAR answers for all of them using my CV. And even though the answers won't be perfect, they'll at least be pre-structured in a logical manner without you having to lift a finger. So that gets you organized. Now, in terms of delivery, I think about it the same way that I think about building a muscle. If you want to build a muscle, you don't just go to the gym one time. You have sets and you have reps over and over again until that muscle gets stronger. I think the same is absolutely true with interviewing. If you do 1 or 2 mock interviews, that's nice, but you're going to have to do 10, 20, 30 to really build that interview muscle up. And because it's really hard and expensive to do that with other humans, you can use a tool on LinkedIn under the job section. It's called Interview Prep, and it's all free. It basically records you doing an interview practice session, and it gives you automatic feedback on how you're coming across. Are you speaking too fast, too slow? Are you varying your pitch, or are you monotone? And are you using all these verbal crutches, these filler words that are detracting from your speech? And you can even share your answer with insiders inside the company to get really high-level feedback. So I think with all these things, practice is critical, and using the right tools for that practice is even more important.
So when you say you can share with insiders, you mean LinkedIn insiders or other company insiders?
Yeah, so insiders at that specific firm. I'll just give you an example. So if you are applying for a job at Google, Google, like many companies, has its own interview standards. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but one of the most important things at Google is your quote-unquote Googliness. Do you seem like you fit our culture? And so who better to evaluate you on that criteria than a person who actually works at Google? And again, to bring it all full circle, if you reached out to a Google employee during your initial, exploration and informational interviewing, you can now go back to that same employee and say, hey, would you mind looking at my answer? Let me know, am I coming across the right way?
Understood. And it's fascinating, like majority of us don't even know about like the tool you mentioned on LinkedIn, which is free of cost. And of course your website as well. Now, let me ask you this. What is the difference between then CAR and STAR method? Because we have also heard there's a method called CAR.
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest, I think it's all semantics. STAR actually adds this extra step of first, what was the situation? Then what did you have to do? Versus CAR says, what's the context or what's the challenge? However, I think the important thing is why are we doing this? Are we doing this just to make our career coaches happy? Or does it actually make sense? And what you always have to do is put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. If I'm an interviewer and I'm doing 5 one-hour interviews back to back to back, I'm going to start to lose attention. I'm going to get a little sleepy, a little distracted. And the beauty of either of those methods is that it keeps things organized and it keeps them tight. Like we've all been in situations where an interview goes off the rails because the person gives an answer that's 20 minutes long and it's totally disorganized and it's already game over. And you can resist that issue by getting really organized ahead of time. So you have your key talking points, you stick to 2 minutes, and then you make sure that the person on the other side of the table really understands you. That's the beauty of those methods.
Got it. I got a relatable question in my mind with networking because being part of, UBC, they all just keep saying network, network, network. But to us, looking from a hiring manager side, they're meeting like 1,000 people a day, though we are just meeting them. So it's very hard for them to remember us. What can we do so they kind of remember us?
Yeah, this is such an important question, Vesh. I love this. And again, it goes back to the idea of understand your audience. So we want to differentiate between the two key players in the hiring process. There's the hiring manager and there's the recruiter. Now, the recruiter is the one that most people are familiar with because they're the ones who come to UBC and they're the face of the company. And you're right, a recruiter meets 1,000 students, so it's going to be hard for them to remember you. However, here's the interesting thing. The hiring manager, who's actually your future boss inside the company, they do not meet very many students because they're shielded by the recruiter. But if you can find the hiring manager and build a connection with them, you have a way better chance of sticking in their mind because very few students ever do that. And you might say, well, Jeremy, of course I want to reach the hiring manager, but I don't know who they are. So what you want to do is you want to go to LinkedIn and you want to put in these two magic words, I'm hiring. And you will see all these people who are raising their hands saying, I'm the actual boss. I'm the one who wants to find great talent. Please be in touch. And if you can reach out to that person and explain what you can do for them, I looked at your JD, here's what you need, here's how I can solve those problems. You can build a direct connection right to the final decision maker versus being one of 1,000 with the recruiter.
Wow. Okay, coming to last question, Jeremy, here. Uh, it's the final step. Let's say we got hired. So I extend my gratitude for your guidance, which has led me to secure a job. Now I aspire to give back by sharing my journey and assisting others. Additionally, I aim to expand my LinkedIn network and cultivate a broader audience. Could you offer some advice and techniques to effectively reach and engage with a wider audience on the platform?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I love that instinct, wanting to pay it forward. And again, for any student out there who's like, I don't understand, why do alumni want to help us? As soon as you have the job, you're going to feel the same way. You're ready to pay it forward to the next generation. That being said, if you want to share what you've learned along the way and build up a following on LinkedIn, I think you always have to think about the LinkedIn algorithm, just like you would think about the applicant tracking system algorithm when you apply for jobs. And the way the LinkedIn algorithm operates is very simple. LinkedIn says we make more money as a company when people are more engaged on the platform. So any post that has a lot of engagement, likes, comments, shares, we're going to push into more people's feeds. And what you want to do to juice up your engagement is not only have a good post, that's obvious. So it's got to have a good hook, it's got to be interesting, it's got to be surprising, but also make sure that the right people see it. So you can use hashtags. Let's say, for instance, you just have a new job as a product manager. Why not do hashtag PM hiring to share some of your insights? And then also tag some of the people in the space who you really respect and admire, maybe who even helped you on your process. So tag the PMs that you're joining, tag the PM advisors at UBC. And what happens is when you tag people, all of a sudden it comes to the top of their feed and they like it, they comment, they share, and everybody in their feed now sees it. It creates sort of these concentric circles, if you will, where all the right people are rippling out through their ecosystems, getting your content in front of all the people that you want to reach. So that is the path to success when it comes to LinkedIn content.
And is there any separate way other than the strategies we discussed to have a coffee chat with somebody?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really tricky about LinkedIn today is that if you go on LinkedIn and you try to send a message, LinkedIn has done a lot of things recently that have made it harder. Number one, you can only send a certain number of personalized invites. Number two, those invites can only be 200 characters, which is very, very short. What you can do instead of connecting on LinkedIn is you can look up their real world email address. So if you go to a site like hunter.io and you put in Nike.com or Google.com or whatever the specific company is, you can figure out their email format, and now you can reach directly into the inbox that professional is checking 5 or 10 times a day. So you have a higher chance of having your message seen, and you can write a longer, more detailed message that's a little more engaging for the alum.
Jeremy, now that you have discussed about hunter.io, don't you think they're gonna block this website?
Well, so here's the reality. I think the thing is that alumni appreciate a message as long as it's well done. If you reach out and say, "Hey, you went to UBC, give me a job," that's not going to be effective no matter the channel. That's going to fall flat on LinkedIn, email, everywhere. But if you reach out and say, "Hey, I'm really inspired by your path. I'm studying in the same school. I'm studying the same major. I'm also interested in the same things you're interested in," that is incredibly appealing to an alum who is hungry for that idea of generativity, paying it forward. And so, my challenge to everyone listening is don't just find people's email addresses and spam them. Instead, send them a really personal, really compelling message, and that way it's worthy of their attention.
Got it. Awesome. Let's wrap it up, and I would like you to share where people can contact you if they want.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thejobinsiders.com is great. And obviously, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, because I share a lot of stuff there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, and I'm really appreciative of you for doing this. I know you're a very busy person.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Vesh, and for everything you're doing.